So here we go. This is really where it gets fun. When I mentioned to you that a lot of what we're going to see tonight is to do with the space exploration era, that's really when the big aha happened. It would have been about 1961 that the first man in space, the Russian Yuri Gagarin, was sent up in a capsule, and he was to be in space for 48 hours, right? Not a very long time. And my goodness, when he landed, he was there like a bag of jelly. He could not move. And they did all kinds of medical tests. He was showing signs of profound osteoporosis. Wow. And his metabolism slowed right down, so the cells just weren't firing. They were checking out. They were shutting down. His perception decreased. His brain was so affected, the neurotransmitters and the function of the brain were so affected that he actually developed mood disorders and was depressed for years after that experience. So that was a hard lesson, right? Learning that in zero field, we cannot sustain life. There's something unique about our planet. So what is that? So what we discovered, and I'll just go through this quickly, is that yes, we're a collection of about 70 trillion cells or more. And some of the biggest Nobel Prizes were given to some of this research, you know, on how cells regulate and how they grow and how they eventually die. And in a lot of that work, they discovered that there's very important signaling that is energetic, and that there is this sort of a spark plug that has to happen for any cell to start functioning. This wave, this impulse, where is that coming from? So let me show you a really interesting little device. This is called the Micmac Handy. I think it's a cute little name, but microwave magnetic wave detector. What it does, it takes the invisible waves that have no sound and makes them have a sound. So it makes it an audible signal that we can actually relate to. So this room, we've just done some initial measuring. It has a very high background EMF count, so electromagnetic frequency from man-made stuff, wiring, the types of lights, probably wireless internet, maybe buried cables. It's got a very high count to begin with. But if you put this on, you'll hear a click. And this is kind of, if you were in a healthy magnetic field, you know, in a outdoor space or in a healthy home, this would actually be a slower tick, 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 nice little slow, steady tick, okay? Now, what that means is that the Earth actually has a magnetic field. So all life on Earth is adapted to have this background thing, and that is exactly what we need for ourselves, but it's static. So when you move, when you take this little guy, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but as you move, we get a speeding up of the sound. You create an impulse out of a static field. So this is what they think is the impulse necessary for all living cells to begin metabolism. And when you die, you lose that vital force. You have it. It's only if you're alive and functioning, and as disease sets in, we diminish that. So what people say, well, where does that come from on our planet? Why are we unique? The planet, as you know, when you go deep into the Earth, it has different densities of matter, right? And you've got the Earth is spinning on its axis, right? It has momentum. And it has liquid magma in it. So this liquid is kind of flowing in a certain direction. And as it goes, it's rubbing against the solid mantle, right? And there's also a lot of iron particles in that. So it creates a dynamo effect, just like the light on your bicycle. You know how it rubs against the tire to create the light on your bike? The same sort of rubbing creates electricity. So the Earth has this background low-level field. And as we move, as we creatures actually move on the planet, we charge ourselves and create the impulse. And that impulse does a really important thing. It starts this thing called the sodium-potassium pump. Well, don't get overwhelmed by these names. Just know that it's kind of like the miniature heartbeat of every cell, right? It's without it, there is no life, there are no cells. The ultimate thing that happens with our little mineral ions flowing around is that We have a net positive charge on the outside of our cells and a net negative charge on the inside. So that way cells know their shape and they can repel each other, right? Like little mini magnets, they don't all blend into one big glob of jelly, right? So that's what defines the functional unit of our body, the cell. And so we need nutrients, we do, and vitamins and minerals to be the spark plugs too, and oxygen for combustion. But once we have that, if we didn't have that background pulse, we'd still have no energy production, nothing. So this is critical, and movement is critical, and interferences from strong and chaotic man-made frequencies highly disrupt this message, these subtle energetics. So our cells begin to choke out. They can't expel waste very well, and carbon dioxide and so on, and they begin to accumulate damage. And that is where dysfunction, fatigue, and disease really starts, is at the level of the cell due to the impaired energetics. So if you're like me and you're kind of that healthy skeptic, you're going to say, oh yeah, so what's the evidence that this thing actually works, right? Well, there are a number of ways that the scientists discovered. By simply lying on the mat and having the program run for 8 minutes, you can see a difference in the red blood cells. Those are easy to capture, right? They're a good example of all your cells in the body, and they're mobile, so they're easy to look at. So this is done through live blood microscopy. It's called dark field microscopy, and there are wonderful practitioners that you can seek out that can do this test. And many people just living on the planet that we live on have malfunctioning cells, right? And if you live above where water streams run below your home or your workplace, that actually creates, there's so little energy left in the system that you actually see the red blood cells stacking up like coins, just like a stack of coins. Can you imagine how little surface area those cells have? How little opportunity can they travel to those little tiny capillaries where they really have to go single file to get to your tissue? So this is where we then see a shift in our internal pH, right? You've heard the term acidosis, tissue acidosis. I'm not talking in the stomach going, oh my gosh, here's the thyroid hormone telling me I'm supposed to be metabolizing. You know, and here's growth hormone telling me I'm supposed to be fixing the damage that I accumulated the last 24 hours. Suddenly everything starts working better when you charge those cells and the cell membranes are normalized. So what the scientists are finding is they're seeing up to a 200% increase in oxygen saturation of tissue. That's huge. That's where, you know, when you, it's almost like your personal hyperbarics, right? In a way. Because you are allowing from the breaths that you take, you're allowing more usage of that valuable oxygen and removal of wastes as well, right? And nutrients that are, you know, maybe you were spending so much money on healthy, good quality nutrients and healthy foods, and yet the cells were not absorbing it. If those cells are not properly charged, that stuff is passing through, you're not absorbing it. So we'll see some great benefits. So the equipment looks like this. It's very simple to use and operate, and anyone can do it. It's a whole body mat. It has the pillow pad, which is this one right here. Okay, and also in the med units, we have one additional applicator, and that is the probe. The Sound Light Relax system is an option that you can plug into the control unit here at the back. And that actually helps to work with your brain to synchronize times of day when you want to concentrate or relax or go to sleep. It works with all the different brain waves in your brain, and you know, this is something that we're all going to explore, but we wanted to first see how this works alone without that other system. But it is something that we're all going to try soon. So this is the control unit, and it generates electromagnetic energy from the circuit board that's inside that little computer, and in the back